Hey everyone, Ken and Michael back for episode 35 of A Shot of Business Central and a Beer, the one and only podcast made to help users like you achieve Business Central greatness and learn a little bit about beer in the process. Today we've got the latest Business Central news. We'll be discussing software, the software's default mandatory fields, and we're going to take a look at some apps that extend the functionality of these default and mandatory fields as well. But first, let's talk beer. Ken was kind of adamant this month about bringing in the beer. I think my choice of mayonnaise pastrami flavored beer last month maybe put him over the edge. So, Ken, how have you been? What are we drinking? And on your ride home, do you ever curse me out after I bring in the beer?
Great to be here, Michael. Yeah, I'm happy I brought in the beer this month. You've just been killing me with this heavy, dark, strong beer recently.
Yeah.
The bocks and porters and stouts.
Yeah.
Granted, we're almost through the winter now. Heading into spring is around the corner. And I thought we would go back to the old, just traditional beer.
Just traditional beer.
So we're going today with Krombacher Pils. It's a Pilsner, German Pilsner beer. It's just old-fashioned good beer.
Yeah, definitely not too strong. 4.8% alcohol. Not like the stuff that I've been bringing in.
So cheers. Go ahead and take a sip. I went ahead and brought in some frosted glasses, threw some glasses in the freezer. Nice icy cold beer. It's about as cold as it can get right now.
It's it tastes, I mean, like we were talking about earlier, it's just beer. It's just a really good tasting beer. Nice and cold.
Yep.
Great spring summer beer, I'd say.
Yep. I think it's like I picked the Krombacher Pilsner. It's just like, I think it's like a really good, well-balanced, it's not too strong. It's not too overpowering. Right?
Not at all.
But it's not like a super light beer. There's like these Hell's beers, which are like German light pilsners.
Yeah.
Or just even a domestic light beer, which sometimes it's just like it
just
almost doesn't taste like beer. It's not a character or flavor in it.
Yeah.
I think this is a kind of a good, nice, balanced.
No, it's really good.
Beer.
I mean, it's got the traditional beer look, good carbonation. And like you said, it's cold, right? So a beer like this has to be cold. You can't drink this any other way besides cold. So Ken, is a Pilsner a lager or is a lager a Pilsner?
All Pilsners are lagers, but not all lagers are Pilsners.
I had to do it. I remember the first time we had one, you asked me. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, it's really good.
So the beer, beer ratings, if you go on to beeradvocate.com, check that out. You're not going to find a really high rating on it.
No, it's not fancy enough.
Because it's right. Yeah, it it's not strong enough or bold enough, to be rated high. But
what's the rating?
It's like a 3.4 out of 5.
That's too low. Come on.
Which is really low. And then you get like this, here, 2.2. Someone says, and again, I think this just goes to show that it's all about personal preferences, right, for beer. And that's what's great about it. There's so many different varieties and types. This guy says, or person, I don't know, if it's Borazov from the Russian Federation. So, says,
vodka drinker.
The beer has a sour taste. The type of hop that reminds me of lavender. In general, it is slightly saturated. I do not like this type of beer. Right.
See, I think of somebody who rates this low is just somebody who doesn't really like the actual normal taste of beer, right? They have to have the, the Barry Weisses or the flavored beers that actually drink beer, right? So those are going to be their 4s and 5 stars, where this would be like a 2 to them.
Yeah.
But
few people say they like their pilsners with rich and noble hops, whereas apparently this does not have enough noble hops or flavor to it.
Can't speak to that.
But I'll tell you what, I am sure going to enjoy it as we not only enjoy this fine Pilsner beer, but we have some Dots honey mustard seasoned pretzel twists as well.
Ken went all out this month.
So I'm gonna kick back, enjoy a couple cold ones here, and talk about mandatory fields in Business Central, and share some other news and notes with the folks. Hey everybody, welcome back to a shot of Business Central and a beer. And here we're going to be doing our shot segment here and give you some shots of news regarding Business Central. And first, we're going to start off with updates. BC Online is now at 19.3, but they're coming out hot and fast. So I'm not sure if we fully went through even last month because of the timing of this 19.3 that came out. So, and it is a little bit noteworthy. In 19.3, there were no new features that were deployed with it. No new localizations or regulatory updates at all. But there were 14 platform updates and 94 application updates.
Wow. Which is generally a lot, especially right after a major release.
Yeah. Usually they've been averaging, let's say, 40 to 60 application updates per month.
Yeah.
And so 94 was kind of like double the usual count. And if you just go out there and do a Bing search for Business Central 19.3, and you'll see the article, and you can actually click on the detailed list of fixes. And it's surprising what you see if you read through them. Mm-hmm. A lot of them are mundane things that you would never even stumble upon.
That most people, yeah.
But there were a few on there that caught my eye that were like, is this something that has never worked and somehow it's just now getting fixed? Or maybe it recently got broken at some point during a major release or something, and it's getting repaired or whatever. But how beautiful is it that you do nothing and all of these fixes are delivered into your Business Central environment?
And, let's put it together for the cloud, right?
Yeah, right.
Who would have thought 5 years ago that that's the way it was going to be? Although I don't refresh my memory. If you had Nav hosted on like an Azure tenant, were the updates?
No, not automated. No, you had
to
basically still someone had to apply those.
Yeah. So not bad. Do you know which ones that the 19.3 updates were kind of caught your mind that, or no?
No, not off the top of my head, but they were things related to like commonly used things like maybe like a trial balance report or aged accounts receivable that are things that I know people use all the time, and it's like.
So you had to do like a double take, like what? No way.
So. Yep. And how about 19.4?
So 19.4 came out as well. Not as many things as 19.3. Really only one feature change, and it is to they are now allowing delegated admins to set up and run cloud migration with approval from a licensed user. So partners, you can now do it.
Yep.
As usual, there's a bunch of hot fixes. I don't know how many. Do you know how many?
6 platform updates, 35 application updates, and about a dozen or so updates for different localized versions, different countries.
Yeah, I saw that Mexico, Norway, Germany, and Italy had some localization updates, but not more along the lines of a standard rollout update. Nothing crazy.
Yep.
But, all right. So those are the updates, and now let's get into Ken. I know has some announcements about DynamicsCon.
Yeah. So So being part of the community as we are, it's always exciting to see new opportunities to share with others our knowledge and help other people be successful with Business Central. So DynamicsCon is a group out there, relatively new, and they are hosting a conference in San Antonio in September 14th through the 16th in San Antonio. And it's called DynamicsCon Live. The URL would be live.dynamicscon.com. And I have been very excited and blessed to be able to go serve as a speaker.
All right.
At the conference. So that's the plan, covering jobs in manufacturing and,
all the good stuff.
Yep. So some of that stuff. So it's coming up, and I'm excited to be heading down to Texas in the fall.
Yeah, because you were at directions for the last one in Texas. So if I remember correctly, I would imagine you have a recommendation for Dynamics Con about signs when you walk into the room or whatever.
Yeah, pay attention to which conference you're at.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yep. So it's pretty exciting. It looks like relatively affordable. I think it's $500 to attend the conference.
Yeah, for a couple days. I don't know how many sessions there are total though. Like for instance, directions is back to back to back with multiple sessions at a time. But I don't know. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, not sure. I know that I think Wednesday, September 14th, there's like a social event. Thursday, keynotes and sessions, and then a community reception till 7:00, and then on Friday, the 16th. It's not super specific on it, but
nice.
Sounds
good. But speaking of Dynamics Con and all that, there's other groups and forums, and lately, I had been personally confused on who is who. So, for instance, there's the D365 UG, which used to be NAVUG, Business Central UG, then Dynamics Communities, and now I think it's called Acceleration Economy. But I thought their forum had got transitioned to the Microsoft Community, which is still active and people are using it. Mm-hmm. But people are still using the
BCUG
forum as well. Mm-hmm. And I know that if you go on their homepage, I think they're trying to make a little bit of a comeback with the forum now. And I just found out today that I mentioned to Ken a couple of days ago, there's another forum called dynamicsusers.net, but I went on there and I went on like the About Me page or whatnot, and I couldn't figure out who this was or who this is. There wasn't too much information, but I just found out today from sitting in on a phone call with the Dynamics Con people that that's one and the same. Dynamics Con and this dynamicsusers.net go together. I believe they refer to their whole organization as DUG, which is Dynamics User Groups. So
they all sound kind of similar.
They do. So it's getting a little confusing out there. But hey, it's more information for people to go out there and try to solve their problems before they have to talk to a partner or
and then there is the Microsoft user community,
right?
Also, which it also has a forum where you can post questions and requests and things. Yeah. And what differentiates that is that the Microsoft support team actually monitors that and will reply to those. Yeah. So you actually will get responses from Microsoft employees who are supporting Business Central.
Yeah, I'm not a big a fan of the Microsoft Dynamics community layout, as I am like the old Dynamics user group forum and the new Dynamics user group forum. Yeah, I tend to like that layout a little bit better. Mm-hmm. But hey, to each their own, and it works out.
Yeah, I mean, the best thing is that there's multiple options out there. There's multiple forums, and think about the user adoption is continuing to increase. Mm-hmm. There's more users out there every day.
Yeah.
Which means more help, and which means Microsoft is going to be providing more resources towards it.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I was on a call today, and I think they mentioned that the first user group started, I can't remember what the person's name was, but it was started in 1995 for NAV and those things, or maybe not NAV, but for something like that. And it slowly transitioned in the beginning, and then the last like 6 or 7 years, it has just taken off, they said.
Is it Mibuso.com?
It might have been.
That's one that's been around for a long time. Mibuso.com. They used to have like things where you could download, like a download section where you could actually download objects and things like that for Navision and NAV back in the day. So,
but you got something interesting in one of the emails, right, from one of the The forums?
Yeah. So speaking of the forums being useful for people. So was it last month or it might have been 2 months ago? You and I right here talked about Business Central for big businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Right, maybe 2 months ago.
Yeah, it might have been 2 months ago.
And we talked about how Microsoft is putting numbers on, what do they consider to be a, quote, big business for Business Central in terms of number of records, number of transactions, and so on.
Got to be careful, though.
And, yeah, right?
They don't put a hard number on it, really. What they say is, they're not saying that if you're over these numbers, you're a big business. They're saying once you get to these numbers, check with your partner to make sure everything runs smoothly.
Right. So, and it's Microsoft, right? So, you always have to consider the source.
Of course.
Not that I don't trust them, but, still. But I have to give a special shout out here to Graham Gallagher from New Zealand Panels Group. Who is a Business Central user, and he posted just recently here to share on a forum, the BCUG forum, about a question pertaining to how big is when
too big or something.
Yeah, when is anyone experiencing performance problems? We're running NAV on premise. Can we move to BC Online? Is that reasonable for us or feasible? So Graham, when he went ahead, I hope I'm saying that correctly. I believe I am. But he shared just recently some specific numbers about their organization. And I'm going to go ahead and just read here, so I'm not misquoting or anything. But I think it's really interesting. He says, we've recently implemented BC in the cloud. We opted for that rather than running manufacturing because our BOM structures are simple, blah, 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 blah. And here's where it gets interesting. So in the quoting now.
Blah,
blah, blah. That was me. Yeah. So now quoting. We have approximately 75 users on at any one time, processing about 2,000 assembly orders a day across 5 plants. The processing is done from a proprietary shop floor application that hooks into BC through API at production scheduling, packing, and dispatch. We have approximately 35,000 actively moving finished goods and components. Honestly, the performance has been better than we expected it to be. Before moving to BC, our ERP ran on a local server through an RDP connection, simple and fast. But we don't feel that we have given up much performance-wise by shifting to the cloud.
Wow.
Hope that helps. Cheers, Graham. So
kudos to Business Central Cloud, right?
So yeah, I would encourage anyone out there who's running BC Online. If you have numbers, you're willing to share just general transaction type volumes, right? You don't have to be super specific about how you're doing it or any of the detailed magic behind the scenes. But this is interesting. 75 users concurrently running.
Yeah, good amount.
5 locations across 5 locations, and 2,000 assembly orders being processed per day for 35,000 different item records.
That's a good amount.
That's a reasonable amount.
I personally think if you move to Business Central Cloud, right, there's some things to take into consideration. Just like if you're on premise, you have to worry about your servers and all that. I think that once you get your internet lined up and the speed lined up with that and everything set up in Business Central, I think it's just as fast as on premise. I think it might even have the potential to be quicker because, if you want to go faster on premise, there's some things you have to actually pay for to upgrade to make it go faster. This is kind of gonna. It's
dynamic, right? We saw a couple months ago, they're monitoring the usage of resources within that BC environment. And once it hits a 60% threshold,
it switches.
It doubles the available resources for that tenant or for that environment.
Yeah.
So, it's to your point. Again, what is that value? How do you put a monetary value on. Well, first of all, you can put a monetary value on how much did we not have to pay in additional hardware, servers, rack space, whatever, right? That infrastructure. You can put a hard number on that, so there's like a hard ROI. Yeah. But how about the fact that no one had to do anything, and it saw that you're using above the threshold and automatically added capacity.
Right, and Microsoft also keeps adding things to speed up Business Central too within the
without having to do anything. Right.
That's hard, where it's hard to put the money value to.
Yeah. Right. It's
pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But it's a testament. I mean.
Yeah. So please, I would encourage people if they can. There's a posting. The headline is Business Central Manufacturing -Cloud. That's kind of the post that this is under, and I would encourage others to go out there and share some details of what they're kind of running.
Yeah. So speaking of Business Central Cloud, this one's kind of for the partners. Partner sandboxes, we've heard about them in the past where, well, first of all, it's kind of an issue for partners, right? Where there's not enough sandboxes to go around for employees of Microsoft partners to get in there and try things out and just work on stuff, right? So what Microsoft did is they noticed it, and people are complaining. Now they have a new feature where partners can actually buy partner sandboxes. So what you do is you've got to go to a page, which we'll put the link in our show notes. You got to request the license. There are two types of licenses. The first one is the partner sandbox license. Now for both of these licenses, you have to have a minimum of 5 licenses. So I think they're like $5 or $6 a piece, something like that.
Yeah.
But you got to have a minimum. The partner sandbox license is basically a Business Central Essentials license to a point, right? So it's going to give you access to a full production environment and 3 sandbox environments. Then there's the Partner Premium Sandbox license, which is everything the Partner Sandbox license is, but you get the premium features. So I don't know exactly what the exact prices are for it. I think it's probably like $5 for one, $6 for the other. I'm not sure. I'll look to see if I can put it in the show notes, but it's out there. So partners, use it.
Yep. That's helpful. Definitely helpful for larger partners who have a lot of people, a lot of resources, and you want each resource to have their own environment so they can try out apps, do development, configuration, look at new versions as they're coming out. So there's a lot of benefits to it, and it's new cost of doing business for partners, I suppose.
That it is. All right, well, that's all I got for the shot. You got anything else? Nope. Ken is done. All right, next up, we're going to talk about default and mandatory fields in Business Central.
Hey everybody, we have today for our feature spotlight, we're going to be talking about mandatory fields in Business Central.
Should be fun.
Yep.
There's a few of them.
Yep, so I'm still enjoying, and I'm not getting paid, by the way, for this, but Krumbacher Pilsner is delicious today. So
That it is.
So for mandatory fields, there is a standard feature in Business Central called mandatory fields. And how this works is if you ever go in and let's say you create a new vendor record, let's say, for example, you may notice that there are certain fields. As soon as you hit the new button, it opens the vendor card. Mm-hmm. And the name field is a good example. It will display a red asterisk immediately to the left of the field where you enter the name.
Yeah.
And then what happens is, as soon as you enter the vendor name and leave the field, that red asterisk disappears. So what that does is that's a visual indicator to you that field was a mandatory field and that it needs to be filled in. And as you scroll down, you may go to other tabs, and tax area code is another one. Posting groups would be like another example, like vendor posting group or general business posting group. Those have red asterisks on it if you leave those values blank.
But mandatory isn't really mandatory, right?
Yeah, so that's what we're here to talk about, right? So what does the word mandatory mean? Well, in Business Central speak, it means that this is a field that generally you're going to need to fill in, or you may get an error message if you try to create or post transactions for this record, right?
Yeah, so according to Microsoft, it means that you will not be able to complete a process without these fields being populated. So, but what is the process? Like you were saying on a new customer card or name or whatever it is, if the name is required and you don't fill it in and you exit out of it,
what happens?
It's going to notify you, I think, right? But what is completing the process? Did it not create the customer card? Would that be not completing the process? Right. But I think it does, doesn't it? The
takeaway here is that these fields that are marked as mandatory fields with the red asterisk are not actually mandatory for you to continue.
Not all of them.
It's right. It's a strong suggestion, if you will, or a recommendation. Yeah. But indeed, you can leave the record and process and continue on without filling it in. You and I, we just did a test here. If you have an item record with no description on it, you will see that there's a red asterisk on the description on the item card. However, I was able to create a sales order and ship and invoice that sales order with that item that had a no value set in the description.
So you're able to complete the process.
Yes.
Which is an issue, I guess, right? A little bit of an issue.
Yeah, I think it can be misleading to people, when they see, if the system says this is a mandatory field. I think the first expectation that people get is that they're going to get an error message.
Yes, 100%.
If they try to save this record and leave the record without filling in that field.
Yeah. I always think, and this is just me, where if I was just creating whatever record it was, if I didn't enter the mandatory field, I'd get the error message. But then if I left that page, my assumption is it would not save it because I did not finish whatever it was I was supposed to finish.
Yep.
But Business Central's assumption is different.
Yeah, it works differently. You'll notice when you're on any page, let's say you're adding a new item record, you will see up in the top right corner, there's a little indicator. And usually there's a little check mark and it says saved.
Gotcha.
Right? But as you go through a vendor or an item record and you're making changes to it, you'll actually notice if you change a field and advance out of the field, you'll see that little save checkbox kind of switch momentarily, and it's saving as you go.
Yeah.
So what happens is there's kind of two levels of data being saved. One is it's as you go. As you're creating, right, you create a new item, you're filling it in, it's saving as you go. So if something were to happen, you close the page, it saved it.
Yeah.
There's no save button.
Right.
It's automatically saving it. But there is the ability to embed logic at the page closing. In addition to that, to say, hey, when I close the page, check these fields or do this logic or whatever it is, right? So there is an opportunity to build extensions or extend the Business Central functionality to actually do a true code mandatory field, right? That says but if I close this item page and I didn't fill in the description, don't let me leave that page until I filled it in.
That was my question. Right. So could you build something that doesn't let the page close until you fill it in?
Correct. Okay. Yep. And you can
makes
do
a lot
that,
of sense.
And depending on what your requirements are and how you want to do it, sometimes you may give the user a warning. You have not filled in the description. Would you still like to close? Mm-hmm. And you could say yes or no, and then it keeps you on the page so you can go fill it in, and then that error goes away.
So what do you think the reasoning is behind I understand why there's a red asterisk letting you know this field's mandatory, but what's the reasoning behind letting you leave the page and whatnot, when it's Business Central out of the box?
Yeah.
I can't think of anything.
My only guess is that, Business Central is a fairly substantial application in terms of the tables and the fields and functionality, right, in there. And the way that it's kind of architected to truly enforce that, right, it's a lot of effort to say, right, we want to enforce this. And here's really why. Because if they were to develop a feature for mandatory fields, it wouldn't be good enough simply for Microsoft to determine the specific fields that they want to make mandatory. You would have to provide a front-end tool application for the system administrator for each company to go in and specify exactly which fields on which tables they want to be mandatory for their company.
Gotcha. So they got to build a little bit more.
And
into
I think it's a significant exercise. There is a Business Central idea out there right now that needs more votes for Microsoft to act on it.
Yeah.
I am actually going to post a separate one, or I may just add to this existing one. Because what I would envision is something similar to the changelog. If you're familiar with the Business Central or the changelog function, changelog allows you to track, right, to write a changelog entry, and you can pick which tables and which fields you want to track. I see that same functionality applying to mandatory fields.
Makes sense.
Right? If I can track at a field level, which fields do I want to track when they were inserted, modified, or deleted? Why can't I also just check a box that says, oh, this is a mandatory field?
Yep.
Right.
I think you should be able to.
And so, in our app segment today, we are going to tie that into this discussion, and we're going to take a look at one mandatory field apps, plus a couple other ones.
Yep.
So there are apps out there. We're going to talk about that in the next segment. But I really think this is because of the global nature of it, that the fact that you would want this to be universally available for companies to pick and choose which tables and which fields they want. I see this as being a new feature down the road at some point that Microsoft embeds with the standard product.
It's too much of a necessity for it not to be included with Business Central out of the box.
Yep.
I completely agree with you.
Yep.
And they'll add it to the base code hopefully and make it kind of simple, and maybe that's where the issue's hard. If you had custom fields, I don't know, but
so let's I wanted to just wrap up this segment to say so to answer the question people probably have as well. Out of the box, when I open Business Central and I look at the item card, I see that there are maybe let's say 5 or 6 fields that have this red asterisk. What if you want a different field to also have a red asterisk on it? Or you've added custom fields and you want the red asterisk to appear on that. How do you do it? The answer is through an extension.
Yep.
So there is no front-end user feature where you go in and you can quote mark something as field mandatory. Instead, there is a property under the hood within code that a developer can go in and set this property show mandatory equal to yes, and that code or that through that extension is what then will put that red box on there. Now, there is also, while you're in there, right, if you're doing this extension to say, hey, let's make this code mandatory, there is a second separate property called not blank that you also, instead of saying the show mandatory that'll put the red asterisk, or in addition to that, you could set the not blank property equal to yes, and that will stop or block the user from saving or leaving that record if that field has not been populated.
Right. I mean, that sounds like something that most people would want. So it's pretty
exactly.
nice.
Yeah. So if you're running Business Central today and you say, I really have to have some mandatory fields that get filled in before the user can continue, then what you would have to do is just build an extension that sets these field properties on them to not blank equals yes. And you should be able to continue.
Or you could download an extension, right?
Yes, which we're going to talk about next. So stay tuned.
Ken and Michael back for the app segment, and today we're going to be focusing on one particular app called NAVtilus Mandatory Fields by actually NAVtilus. Hope I'm saying that right. And then after we take a look at that, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the other apps that we saw that might do a little bit of the same thing as NAVtilus, but that's going to be towards the end of this segment. So let's talk about NAVtilus. According to NAVtilus, mandatory field setup enables you to set up certain fields on records in a table that must be basically mandatory, and it gives you to set up these fields with conditions and whatnot. I have to say, it was one of the easier apps that we've tried to download and install. It worked. The features are great, which we'll talk about. The pricing is free. I mean, it's never ending. And I'm not a Business Central power user by any means. I'm a marketing guy. So for me to actually go in there and set it up and be able to use it is top notch in my book. Consider myself maybe just a basic user. When I went in there with Ken and we went through it, Ken's obviously a master at Business Central. He didn't even look at like the installation documentation. He just went in there and blasted through it and set up everything. And
that's how people do it. That's my
that
goal,
is,
right?
Yeah, that is.
No one reads.
That's a guy thing, right?
Yeah, you just, let me see. I should just be able to click here and hit yes, and away we go.
Yeah, I guess if I'm building something, fine. But software, I'm a little bit different. But, like I said, installation was simple. You can go in there and you can set any field that you want to mandatory. You can set any custom field that you've created to mandatory. I know, Ken, you've got the Excel chart that we marked off on a couple things.
Yeah.
Like, what do we got in there?
Yeah, well, we ran this through the ringer. Usually sometimes we'll get together and we'll review an app and go through the process together. Sometimes you'll do it. Sometimes I'll do it. And in this case, we got together, went through the installation, some quick setup.
Maybe we should tell the viewers that we were actually planning on going through 4 or 5 different apps.
Yeah.
And this was actually the first one, and it kind of knocked it out of the ballpark.
Yeah, we thought, I think, we had so much fun.
Yeah, exactly.
Setting it up and testing it that we ran out of time, and so we'll highlight a couple other options out there and what they may offer above and beyond what we looked at. But again, if you're looking for something for free, this worked great. So what we did was we did some we documented kind of our testing, and we did some very specific types of tests. The first one we did is we wanted to make sure that we could set a field on a card page as mandatory. So like on the customer card. So we set it up for payment method. And that worked. We then said, what about a list page? So I set it up, the description on the payment terms list page, where you set up payment terms. Same thing, set up a rule on that, worked. We tried it on a journal page. Specifically, we set the reason code to code mandatory on the item journal page. And what was noteworthy about that one was it was a journal page, but the reason code was not displayed on my reason codes, right? I had to go personalize it to add it. But even when it wasn't displayed as a field on the page, it still checked it and gave me a note, gave me a warning. We tried it on a document header. So we set up a rule that said, okay, when I enter a sales document, make sure that my shipping agent is populated. Worked. We then took it one step further and said, well, wait a minute. A shipping agent is required on a sales order, but not a sales quote. So we went into the setup and we saw that you could actually set filters. Mm-hmm. So we set a filter on the rule to say document type is order. And then when we went in, again, we went to the order, it still worked. But when we went to a sales quote, we did not get the warning there on the mandatory field.
Right.
So you can even set filters to limit when that mandatory rule comes into play. We then did it on a document line. That was a little trickier. So I think
this is the one that didn't work out.
It was popping the. It seems like they've embedded the check into like a validate function. So it was popping up multiple times as you added a line.
Right.
So,
it worked, but
it was a little annoying.
Yeah. It's validating really.
So that was the one thing. And then we did a custom field. We had in our environment, we had a custom field that had been added to the customer, and we were able to set up a mandatory rule for our custom field.
That one kind of shocked me. I didn't think
that was going to work. Yeah.
Yeah, especially for a free.
It's like a table
free
extension.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah. We did then multiple fields. So we said, well, what if we've got two fields on the customer, and those are both mandatory, and I leave them both blank? What's going to happen? It popped one message telling me, and it listed both of those fields, that they were both blank.
Right.
Right. And then the final test we did was what they call a consequence. Right. So for this rule, what we said is that if a certain field was blank, then set the blocked field to all. So what happens is if you don't set that field that's required, the customer automatically was blocked.
Yeah.
And this was the best part. Once I went back in and I filled in the field, it automatically removed that blocked field.
Right.
Because it saw that I no longer had that consequence, so it undid it and cleared it out.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. The one thing I think I might have liked to have seen, but I don't know if they could do it, was put a red asterisk, like we talked about earlier, next to the mandatory field.
I'll give you a red asterisk.
But other than that, yeah, it worked. It worked.
Yeah.
Phenomenally.
It does. It does. So like, before, we over gloat and gloat.
Yeah, too much, yeah.
Right? Keep in mind, it's free.
That's
right?
why you get to gloat about it.
But in regards to, quote, mandatory fields, it is still a warning and does not prevent posting.
Correct.
Right? So
follows the Business Central logic.
Right. So, instead of the red asterisk that you love so much, it actually pops up a warning message, displays it to the user, like in their face, that they have to click OK on, right, to continue. So I'm okay with that. Like, to me, the red asterisk, it's kind of easy to ignore that. But I get a message when I try to leave a record, and it says, shipping agent must not be blank.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. Let's give the user some credit, right?
Well, yeah, I look at the red asterisk more of, let's just say you've got 40 fields to fill out. Yeah. You just want to know which ones are actually required instead of having to do all of them and then finding out, at the end when you try to leave the page that you missed one or whatnot.
Yeah. So I would say, we were having fun kind of going through, and right, you heard about all the different scenarios we did. And by the way, we installed the app, we ran through the setup, and we did all of this testing. Would you say an hour?
Yeah, just about an hour.
In 1 hour. So all those tests that we did, right? First time ever looking at it and figuring out how to set up the filters, how to set up the consequences, and running through all the tests.
And that was without following the instructions.
Without opening a user manual.
Yeah, definitely nice and smooth running.
Yeah,
I like it a lot.
I would recommend it. Anyone that says they're looking for a little bit more in terms of mandatory fields, I would say absolutely take a look at NAVtilus.
Yeah, we'll put a link in the show notes, and then let's talk about some of the other ones that might even extend the mandatory field functionality a little bit more than NAVtilus does. So you've got data security by EOS Solutions. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
No, I was just saying, it's got a little bit more features. For instance, let's see, you can manage user or group policy and permit to change record status only to granted people. You can send an email when a record change status. No coding, very easy, that type of thing. It just has more functionality as it should, right? Because this is a paid version. So pricing for this one is yearly subscription to get full functionality is $678.76 or $600 US, or 600 euro. So,
but that's for 13 predefined tables.
Correct.
Is that right? And then access to extensions to add more. So there's some limitations, and what I noticed on this one is that it appears to be free.
It appears to be free.
But if you read the detailed description of it, it is free for mandatory fields on the vendor table.
Yes.
So you can install the app and you can use it on the vendor table. But beyond that, you need the paid subscription.
You do need to pay, yeah. All right, next up, Status Management by Opportunix. This one, you can define your own custom lifecycle with your own statuses, set up permissions for each status by user group. There's an option to create archive versions of sales and purchase documents for each status. It's just like the other one, has more features.
Yeah, I saw you can create flows, and you can also block posting.
Yeah.
So this is a true, I don't want this sucker to get posted if this field hasn't been filled in. This takes it to that level and says, okay, you can't process it.
Yeah, and pricing for this one is relatively pretty good. It's $2.39 per user per month.
U.S. dollars.
U.S. dollars, correct, yeah. The only thing I didn't like about this, though, is they said that if a free trial is set up in a production environment, it automatically changes to a paid subscription when the trial ends. I'm not a fan of those type of things. I think when the trial's over, end it.
You've been hoodwinked one too many times over your lifetime.
I have,
right?
yeah, exactly, yeah. iPhones and apps years ago when they first came out.
Yeah, I get it. Yep.
But so
that looks like kind of definitely a more feature-rich, app with some more bells and whistles on it.
And that app actually adds 2 permission sets to Business Central: the Status Management Manager and the Status Management User permission sets.
So you can kind of control who has the ability to set up these rules,
which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
All right.
And then we got one more.
We do. You want to lead it off?
Yeah, Release Pro from Ultima. And that one has some like workflow. It can be incorporated with the workflow approvals within Business Central on sales documents and purchase documents. It also has the ability for you to set up, do you want it to just provide a notification to the user, provide a warning, or make it truly mandatory? So you can you have a couple different types of rules that you can put in place. And this one is approximately, not exactly, $56.72 US dollars per month requires an annual contract.
Yeah.
So I don't know what those numbers, is that 50 euros?
That one I do not
euros? know. I lose track of my currency translations.
Yeah, it's probably about 65, somewhere around there.
So my takeaway on it is that for many people, the free version, NAVtilus, that we reviewed, provides a really good level of functionality. It's kind of like the 80-20 rule, but if you're looking for that extended functionality, the EOS Solutions, Opportunix, or Ultima's products might be something worth looking into.
Yeah.
And there's nothing more I love more than having options, right? Because each company is unique. That's why they're running Business Central, right? Because you can tailor it, to manage your business. And having 4 at least, right? And we may have all apologies to others that there may be other mandatory field apps out there also that we didn't have a chance to cover. So our apologies if that is the case. But this was our what we could get done here.
Yeah, and like we said earlier, the one thing I like about NAVtilus is free. Can't go wrong with a good app that is free.
People like a good price point. That's for sure.
Yeah, I gotta wonder why it's free though. I haven't looked at any of their other apps. Maybe they've got some other bigger apps, and that's where they get the revenue from or whatnot. But
yeah, when you get to who knows? Yeah, right. I didn't see anything like where it said, well, if you actually truly want to block posting, right? Like instead of just giving you these in your face warnings when you're missing something, you truly want to block it. Then you get the premium version, and that's what you pay for, right? Like kind of the old model of you give people some base level of features and functionality for no charge, but then when you want to add some of the advanced bells and whistles, you pay now, for that.
Speaking of that, I think we chatted about it before. I guess another option to these apps would be, we talked about it in our last segment, but would be to actually pay to have your own extension created, and then you own the extension for the life of your Business Central, whatever.
Yeah.
Instead of having to pay a yearly fee and whatnot. That's also another option.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you look at it, right, let's say like in the case where you have a very finite list of fields that you want to be mandatory, and you go, look, I've got these. It's 18 fields across 4 different tables.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that the user can't leave without populating this. We talked about the blank and show mandatory properties. Go write an extension that just makes those 18 fields mandatory. Sure, you're gonna pay a developer if you have to do that. But once you pay the developer one time, you now have that extension, and there's no recurring cost going forward. It's done, and it's going to stay in your environment going forward. Where if that's the case, that could be the best solution for you.
Yeah.
However, that things change, right?
Fields.
Next month, hey, I've got 2 more fields. Can we make these 2 new fields mandatory? Right? Everyone, over time, the business evolves, things change, you start running this new module, you realize you need this one to be, so that's where these apps come into play, because they're flexible and you can extend them and use them for different fields and different tables.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, all right, we made it through another episode of Shot of Business Central and Beer, but we have to review the beer. We did not review the beer.
That we do, my friend.
I guess I could go first. I got to start taking I got to up my beer review game, right? So I know, there's taste, aroma, look, smell, all that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to start taking into consideration the design on cans and beer bottles. I've noticed a couple times with our last purchases of cans, they're going all out with art on the cans.
Sure.
And it's kind of amazing. And I think that type of quality and
it's marketing,
commitment,
right? Catches your eye.
Maybe I guess so when you're walking through Benny's, but there's so many things in like Benny's that
you got 1,000 options sitting there.
Yeah.
So what's gonna catch your eye?
Right. You want to go first? You want me to go first?
I'm willing to go first. So, probably not. There's no surprise to anyone, but I like IPAs and American pale ales and pilsners. Right? So I brought this so I could drink something I would enjoy today. And I'm gonna give it a 95 Which
wow, that is a lot higher than I thought you were going to go.
It is high. It's one of my favorites. It's 1 point higher than Carlsberg Danish Pilsner that we brought in as an homage to NAVision back in the day. So I looked at kind of what I gave the Carlsberg, and I like this just a scotch more. So that was a 94. So I have no choice but to go 95.
What'd you give Miller Lite? Do you know?
Miller Lite?
Yeah, didn't you have Miller Lite on
89.
89.
Because that's just an everyday beer. So there's right.
Yeah, but I put them on kind of the same level, right?
Right? Like I like Miller Lite. That's an 89 because I could drink that anytime, any day, right? But this from a flavor, general enjoyment standpoint, I go 95. And I've only got two or three that I've rated higher.
Yeah. Zombie does.
Two, actually.
Yeah, your palate is obviously a little bit more defined than mine with beer. And it is, and maybe that's just the thing, right? There's people who, they get all the subtle notes of all this or whatnot. I'm more of, it's good or it's bad. You know what I mean? I don't get the horse blanket and the chocolatey notes.
Yeah. Did you enjoy drinking it?
Yes, exactly. Right.
That's the bottom line.
Are
you going to look back and go, yeah, that was pretty good?
Yeah. So it's harder sometimes to distinguish between like a Miller Lite and a what is this, Kronbacher, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's a little bit more difficult for me. I think I gave Miller Lite maybe like an 84. So I'm going to go with... Can you see what I gave Miller Lite?
I don't have a rating for you on that. Was that one that I drank?
Oh, maybe it's one you
drank Corona or something else?
Jack Daniels, maybe. Might have been during the pandemic, right?
Jack and Coke?
Yeah, not just straight Jack. I'm going to go with, if I would give Miller like an 84, I'm going to go with 85. One right above it. To me, they're kind of on the same plane.
So you gave Summer Shandy, Leinenkugel's Summer Shandy in 84.
I did?
You did.
Oh, I got to go lower than that. All right. Oh, you're killing me. All right, then I got to go 80 then for this.
So similar.
I'm sure I'm all over
similar
the board.
to the Samuel Smith's Organic Chocolate Stout.
That was pretty good. I liked that one. It wasn't bad.
That was an 80.
That was an 80?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably on par. Two different beers, though.
Very
you know what
different.
I mean?
But to your point, the overall level of enjoyment, right?
Exactly.
Is what we're doing.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, I'm going to go 80 then. I'm going to go 80. And you went 95?
Yep.
All right. I got to get my ratings in order.
Come on, get your head out of your ass.
I got to. All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining us once again. As always, share the podcast. Let us know if you like it. Let us know if you have any questions or want to be a guest. And Ken's going to take us out.
Bye-bye.
As we end today's podcast, we want to give a big thank you to everyone who listens, shares this podcast, and leaves us reviews. You've taken a good amount of your time out of your day, and we truly appreciate it. Thanks again. And don't be afraid to email us at marketing@solsyst.com with your tips for the podcast, or maybe you'd even like to be a guest during an episode.